Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. One of the best ways to save space is to build a router table into your table saw. Very efficient. I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help you take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification on your mobile device so you'll know every time we release a new video. Good? All right, back to the bench. I think a router is a critical tool for anyone that uses both hand and power tools. Extremely versatile, made even more versatile by having a router table where you're mounting the router essentially upside down, but it gives you lots of options that you don't always have when you're holding it freehand. Now you've got three options. You can buy an already made router table, you can make a designated router table, or you can use this wing of your table saw. It's space that is already designated. You're not having to take up extra space, and if you have a small shop, that's critical. You can also use the fence off of your table saw, acts as double duty for your router table, and if you need to, you can build a sleeve like this that goes over top of your fence, and then you can do whatever you need on this side in order to build it out to hide part of the router if you're doing just a decorative edge. Other good thing about it is it doesn't take a lot of time. It's essentially cutting a hole in the end of your table, making a corresponding base plate for your router, and a little bit of dust collection, and you're good to go. I'm going to walk you through this process as I make it on my latest table saw. Okay, this is the plan of attack. This is a new saw stop. This is their industrial version, 3 horsepower. You've got 52 inches to the right of the blade. So I'm not typically going to interfere with operations over there because rarely do I use this much. And if I do need this full capacity, I can always drop the router bit all the way down, which I normally would anyway, and that leaves the fence able to cross over the top without a problem. Now underneath here there are some ribs. The only downside to this is that this material that they used is only 5/8 of an inch thick. Actually, it's less than 5/8 of an inch. It's closer to 9/16, which isn't going to leave me a lot. So I think I'm going to have to put a frame underneath the hole to give that a little more holding power to secure the weight of the router. But there's ribs in the framework that essentially run from here over. So the best spot to put this is going to be right here. It also runs in this direction, but I've got almost 20 inches, so I don't need to be right here at the edge. I can set it back in there a little bit, which will give me a little more reference room when I'm using the table. In fact, I'm going to take it over a little bit further. Now I have an apparatus that I built underneath here to hold all of my jigs, so I don't want to run into those. But I think if I'm right about there, I should be okay. That gives me 12.5 inches from this edge. 12.5 inches, and that's enough. So I'm going to use a square base plate, and it doesn't have to be extremely big, which is one of the reasons why I chose this router. If you notice that this way it's got a pretty narrow profile. This is a DeWalt, I think it's a 621. So first thing we want to do is measure or decide how much we're going to use for a base plate. And I guess I'd want to have at least 1 inch on either side. In fact, let's go to 1.5 inches, and that means we're going to end up with, let's go, well, we don't want to make it that wide. I'm going to come back a little bit. Let's go with 6.25 inches. So a rectangular shaped base plate, 6.25, and I'm going to use 1/2 inch MDF, which on a small piece is plenty strong enough. Tends to stay nice and flat, smooth surface, lots of reasons. I don't use plywood because plywood has a tendency to twist a little bit, whereas the MDF is more likely to stay flat. And in this direction, now we've got to be able to lift this right up out of the table. I've got to remember that too, and I got plenty of room there. So when it comes to this size, or in the length of it, I've got these 2 handles and I've got this, but that can be turned in, so we don't have to worry about that. So we need it to be at least 11 inches just to clear that. So I'm going to suggest we go 12 inches, and we'll see what we have between the ribs. We've got 12 3/4 between the ribs, so we can make that. So let's actually go, give us a little extra room. Let's go 12 1/4 that way. So we need a base plate that's going to be 12 1/4 by 6 1/4 by 1/2 inch MDF. Okay, so there's my template. We'll attach that later. I want to make sure I've got lots of clearance on this, so I'm going to check again to see exactly where these ribs are. So from the outside, the edge is 8 5/8. So I want to be able to put some support directly underneath. So I don't know how much room we have. 8 5/8, and there's 12 3/4 between them. So if we're here, and 12 3/4 between them, well, that doesn't leave us much at all, but that's all right, because we can, if we put support along this edge and along this edge, we don't need to really worry about this little short distance. So that needs to sit right about there. And now we have about 12 1/4 inches this way. And that 12 1/4 just measures to where this cabinet is, so we have room up on top of that, so that's not really a big issue. So I'm going to put it right about there. Should measure that so we know. 11 3/4. 11 3/4 to the outside. And where were we here? 9 inches. That's MDF as well. So that black is going to tear. And I don't know if having the masking tape on there is going to improve that or not. Let's see. No, it still does. So I think what I'll do is I will cut all just inside the line. Well, I'll probably stay about 1/16 of an inch away from the line, and then I'm going to make a template. We can go in and use a flush trim to get a nice clean cut. I don't want the ragged cut. Something I'm going to see all the time. wasn't being particularly careful, but you can see how ragged that was. The result was using the jigsaw. So we'll make a template so we can go in there and use it with the trim router and make that much nicer. Okay, I've got a flush trim bit. That's a 3/4 flush trim, which means it's going to give me a round corner, but that's all right. I can make the base plate fit. So I've got some scrap. I've got lots of scrap MDF, 1/2 inch from a job that we are doing. So what I'm going to do is just move the fence over and use it as a means of, I just want to move it far enough that we can get rid of all that torn up stuff. That's it right there. So we'll use that. Then we'll bring this one in. We'll use this piece. We'll use this piece back here. Now I'll clamp those in place. Just like that. I'll grab some clamps. Just to make sure, I'm going to put an extra clamp here and there just to hold that, keep it from moving. Okay, I'm just going to do a dry run, make sure I clear everything. Okay, now that's all 1/2 inch, but it's going to be sticking up a little bit, but it shouldn't cause a problem. Didn't quite get rid of those corners. So we'll make a bigger base plate. We've got to come this way. We've got the room, and that way we can get rid of those corners where the saw got held up. About like that. Check it. 6 3/8. Went a little bit too far. Okay, I'm going to put another clamp on there just because that's the one we're going to be working against. Okay, I jumped the gun on the base plate because we got to go in now and cut a rabbet. And I'm going to set that down. And then when we put our reinforcement pieces underneath, we can put screws down in and use that to help level the base plate. So I've got a rabbeting bit in here. I'm going to do it in a couple of stages just because of the amount of material that it hogs off. Okay. And this one makes a mess. I think I will grab my mask this time. Should have used it the first time. There's something I didn't expect, but if you go really slow, your carbide bits will usually survive hitting something like that. Even though that's a screw, I was surprised how it cut it quite cleanly. Okay, I cut a new template, and that's fits well enough. I can easily get it out. It fits in its length, and it fits in its width. Okay, so now we need to cut these corners. Now, I can't just go in. I was going to use my dividers to go in and just do the radius, but because the bearing goes around this corner, then that's not, this doesn't work out that way. So instead, what I'm going to do is take a piece of wide masking tape. I don't need to be too wide. And put that on. A little pressure right on the corner. Then if I take a sharp knife, and I can cut along that edge. Put that on there. Get it just right. Okay. Now we'll go over the bandsaw and cut off the majority of it, and then we'll use the disc sander to trim it to fit. Okay. Should have marked which corner was which, but I don't think it matters. Okay. That one fits all right. Okay, it's just a little bit snug on this corner and this corner. I'll just go back over the... Actually, rather than do that, I think I'm going to use a rasp. You could use a file for this as well. What I like about the rasp is it is slow, and it allows you to really sneak up on the fit. That disc sander can be pretty aggressive, even with a fine belt in it, or fine disc. Okay, so that's sitting below, a little bit below. So we'll fix that with our levelers. I want it to be nice and snug. I don't want it wiggling around at all. The tighter the better. Okay, so I made some cleats out of birch, but I never liked the finish off of the thickness plane, so I always prefer to hand plane that so it's nice and flat. And then we'll get a clean edge. Now we can put that in. I put the other one in. I'm using, as I mentioned, Gorilla Glue because it's the only thing I can imagine that will actually stick to the underside. And I don't even know if it's going to stick. That's melamine. But I'm screwing it and using the Gorilla Glue, so that should work together to keep it in place. Hey, if you like this video, we have more. Our monthly newsletter has subscriber-only content, discounts monthly on tools, and anything we bring out that's new, subscribers get first crack at it. Click on the link below. Let's get back to work. Now we got a wet rag. And we'll just dampen that surface, clean it at the same time. I want that to be flush, or as flush as possible with the edge. Now we'll go underneath and put probably 2, 4, 6, 8 screws in there. I don't have a whole lot of MDF to screw into, so it's really important that I get a good bite in it. But you don't want the screw to grab in the wood at all. So I'm going in with a larger diameter, and I'm just screwing through the wood. And the piece of tape just tells me how far to go. That means when I put the screw in, it'll easily pass through the wood, bite into the MDF, and actually pull that up tight. Okay, I want ones on the side as well, so I can put at least one height adjustment screw in the middle. So I'll put that, this is a piece of birch, I'll glue that to the side, put a few screws in there, and then this one's a little bit closer, so I've got a thinner one in there, but by the time that glues together, it'll be one piece of wood. Actually, I don't need, yeah, I do. Oh, well, I'm waiting for that glue to dry, because if I do anything around there, I'll get it all over me. I find that MDF is a great product. However, it has such a soft inner core that if it's in an area where it's going to get used a lot, it doesn't take long to get broken down. So cyanacrylate, wood glue, or super glue for wood. Just go in there and I'm going to saturate all of this exposed MDF. That's still soaking in. I was going to use this old brush to circulate it around, or distribute it evenly, but it's soaking up so much of it I don't need it. Now, when that cyanacrylate dries, it sometimes leaves the surface a little rough, so I'm just using a chisel as a scraper. Make that a little smoother. Okay, that's a little. So we can either go in and scrape around here, because that cyanacrylate makes the MDF swell a little bit, or we can go in and we can just take a little bit off of this. I think I can do it right on this just as easy. Okay. That's pretty close. It's just sitting a little bit below the surface, which is what I want. That way I can go in and fine tune it. So what I think we'll do is put one here and one here. And I think there's enough support on that we can get away with 3 on the long sides. Oh, got a screw right there. I come over here. One here. Probably should put one in the middle. They don't need to be terribly long. We want to make sure that they're countersunk so we can take it a little bit below the surface and then we can fine tune it to get exactly what we want. Let's start with having them below the surface. Okay, the screws are all in. I think they're all sitting flush. I just got to reshape or take a little more off of these corners. I want that to fit in and out without having to force it. That way I can better ascertain if those screws are in the right position and get this sitting perfectly flush and well supported. Okay. So I don't want any slop if I can avoid it. So I'm going to get some bolts that I know will fit in there just right. That looks like 3/16. And we got to sink them down below the surface. That's going to be another area where we're going to have to saturate it with cyanacrylate to stiffen that up. So the first thing to do is go find some bolts, and we're going to need them to be about 1.5 inches would be ideal. Okay, the dust was a good idea, but not precise enough for this. So I'm just going to use a brad point bit. It's 1/4 inch actually, but not 3/16. Put that in there. That'll give me a hole. I think I can get all, I can get 3. I'm just not going to be able to. I'm going to be able to get that 4th one. Unless I can push down on it enough. Get that standing plumb. All right, hopefully that made a mark. Okay, there, and there. Perfect. The reason we can't just go ahead and drill the 1/4 inch hole first, over here we've got a counter bore for that head. And on the 1/2 inch bit, there's a centering spur. And if we try to put that into a 1/4 inch hole, well, obviously the spur is no good and that'll wiggle itself all around. So I'm going to use a small diameter bit. That'll give me my mark, transferring it from the inside to the outside. I can use that little hole as a guide for that centering point, get that drilled to the exact depth we want. Then we can go in and find, and using that centering hole, do the same thing with the brad point. And everything will work just perfect. make sure you really soak these. This is going to be the top side, so I don't make it looking too messy. We forgot to drill the hole, but we can actually plunge that hole if we want to. Yeah, that'll be easier. It would have made a lot more sense to just have marked where that needed to be and gone in and drilled out the hole on the drill press before I mounted the plate, but I didn't do it. If I was going to do it again, I would. Now, before we go in and adjust for the height, we actually have to screw this in place simply because if you're using a plunge router, there's springs in it. So when you try to bring that up, it's going to push right up on you. So we need to go in, and one in each corner will do. So let's see where we need to put it. Okay, we want to catch that wood. So I'm going to stay on the high side. I'll go right here. Right here. I want to make sure I'm clearing those screws we put in. Need to move that one over a little bit. And down here. Now we want to drill these out so that want to make sure that's nice and clean so you never have debris, preventing that from seating. And this is another one where you're going to want to saturate those holes. I want to make sure I don't have any burr on the bottom side. Okay, now what I would do is take these back out, and any areas that aren't perfectly level, I go in and just adjust those screws. But once you're done, you've got a great router table. Set that for whatever you want. Easy to get at. I'm actually close enough here I could probably change my bits without having to take this out. Wax this just to make it so that the wood runs over it a little bit smoother. You can use your fence. It's great. Here you go. If you like my work and enjoy my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos and help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the link below, the chisel and plane icon, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our online and in-person workshops.